and welcome back to Darvanalee Design Studio. For those that don't know, my name's Nicole Reed, and today we're going to make this gorgeous fabric storage basket. You could use it for anything. You could use it for a little trash can in your sewing room. It's got a flat bottom, it stands up as you can see, and you could use, as I said, you could use it for anything. You could store cotton reels in it, you can use it as a little trash can in your sewing room, you could even just put bits and pieces in there, hair elastics, you name it, you could use it for. So let's get started. The things that you're going to need today to make your fabric basket is you are going to need an ironing pad. As you can see, I've got one just off to the side here. You're also going to need an iron turned on and to a warm setting, not too hot, because we are going to be putting interfacing onto our fabric. You're going to need a couple of fat quarters. Now you should be able to get two of these baskets, maybe one slightly smaller than the other, out of your 2 fat quarters. You're also going to need to have some fusible fleece, and you're also going to need some sort of interfacing. Now it can be non-woven or it can be woven, up to you. My 2 favorite brands that I use is Birch non-woven and SF101 for the woven, so either one of those will be fine. I'm using a medium weight interfacing. Okay, you're also going to need some cutting tools, so either a rotary cutter or a pair of scissors. You're going to need some matching thread. You're also going to need some either pins or some wonder clips, up to you. You're also going to need your standard foot that comes with your sewing machine. We're not going to actually use a 1/4 inch foot today. We're going to just use our standard foot, and we are going to use the edge of our foot as our seam guide. Okay, so if you don't have a standard foot, which most machines come with them, so you should have one somewhere. If not, you can use a 1/4 inch foot, but just use the outside of the edge, not the actual 1/4 inch. We just want a little bit bigger than a 1/4 inch. You can also add your business tags onto them if you want to. It's entirely up to you. I always add mine to the lining as not to take away to the outside of the bag. So I put them in an obscure place somewhere. And you're also going to need a working sewing machine, and put a new needle in too if you haven't put one in for a while. Put a new needle in, and you're also going to need a cutting mat and some rulers. Alright, so I'm going to move all this stuff out of the way, and we're going to start to put the interfacing onto our fabric. Okay, so as always, I'm going to start with my exterior fabric. Now you want to cut your, I'm using non-directional fabric at the moment, so it doesn't matter, but just be aware if you are making directional fabric that the short end is going across the top. Okay, so this is going to measure 10 inches across this way, and then 18 inches the long side. Okay, so 10 inches across the top and 18 inches along the long side, and it's just one piece of fabric. Now I am putting the fusible fleece onto the exterior fabric, so I always place my fusible fleece down, okay, with the bumpy side, so you should be able to feel the glue on this. Okay, that is the side that we want to put to the wrong side of our fabric. Alright, so we'll just lay that down, and sometimes my cutting isn't always the best, so my fusible fleece might come out from the edge. Once we've got this fused on, then I will go back and I will take off that excess fusible fleece, but you want to get it as straight as possible. It's better to have a little bit extra than not enough, isn't it? Okay, and then I've got my iron set to just a warm setting, so round about the wool setting, maybe a little bit less than that. I find that that works the best for my fusible fleece, and I'm using Matilda's Own. And then I just slowly work my way down, adhering that on. Now if your iron is too hot, what will happen is it could shrink the fusible fleece, and we don't want that. Okay, we want it to look nice and smooth for the outside of the bag or the basket. I've been making lots of bags, so I'll probably say bag a lot. All right, so that is going on just nicely. I also use my clapper as well. In some cases, if I find that the iron has just been that little bit too hot, I'll run my clapper over it, and that'll give it a nice smooth finish. All right, so you can see there you don't have to put much pressure or anything like that. That gets stuck on there quite easily. I go over it a couple of times and just make sure that I've got it all stuck down, and then I'll set that aside and let that cool before I handle it again. There's a couple of little spots that I need to just take that fusible fleece back to the fabric. So you can see there, there's just a little bit of overhang, and we don't want to get that on our iron or anything like that, so we'll trim that off. It'll also make your sewing a lot easier. Okay, again, we're going to repeat the same thing with our lining fabric, only this time we're going to put our woven or non-woven interfacing on. Now, the reason why I say, you know, normally people will pick one or the other, the reason I say non-woven or woven, it doesn't matter, because this is for a lining inside a basket. Okay, it's just to give it a little bit more structure to the fabric, make it a little less flimsy. Okay, so it doesn't really matter what interfacing you use. It's not for a collar or a cuff or anything like that, so it's all good. All right, and then I just press that on. Now this one does take a little bit longer, okay, to adhere, and sometimes I have to put some water onto that. So I am just going to, because I don't use steam in my iron, I will just put a sprinkling of water on that. So I am just, you can see it's just starting to stick now. It does take a little bit longer. This is the Birch brand that I am using, and you can find all these supplies over on our website. The only fabric I don't have any left of is this one here. I still have some of this fabric on the website. Unfortunately, this is my last little bit of fat of the fat quarter that I've got of this one, and it wasn't quite a fat quarter, so it was just, I'd used it in other projects, so I basically thought, well, I'll use the rest of it up and then it's done. I've got just a smidge left, maybe for a small basket. Now sometimes with this one, I know with your wovens you can press them. With this one, if the iron is cool enough, you can get away with pressing this, but you need to make sure that you have a really cool iron, because otherwise it will just shrivel under your iron. So definitely work with the warm. It takes a little bit longer, but you still get a really good result. All right, so we've done that, and now we'll move on to the sewing. So I'm going to move the iron out of the way so I don't burn myself. Okay, and I'll move the ironing pad out of the way too. And then basically this is super easy. All we're going to do is bring our short ends up and fold that in half, making sure our raw edges are aligning. Grab some clips and just pin down each side, or clip down each side. Okay, now at this stage I like to also pop in my little label. So on this side here, I will just pop that in, probably about 2 inches down from the top, maybe a bit more actually. I'll probably come down about 3 inches. Okay, and then I will just put that clip on there, and that'll hold it in place. Now on this side of your lining, we're working with our lining first. We're just going to make a little mark about 2 inches to 2.5 inches. Okay, and what we're going to do is we're actually going to leave that open. So when we sew this side, we're just going to start at the top, do a back stitch, sew down to here, do a back stitch, jump over to here, do a back stitch, and come down and do the same thing again. Okay, so basically don't forget to leave that, and that's where we're going to turn our basket all the way through. Right, so once you've done that, set that aside, and then grab your rotary cutter or your scissors and trim off that excess interfacing. So you can use your scissors or you use your rotary cutter. I find it easier to use your rotary cutter. and you probably will too. There we go, and I'll throw that in the bin over there. Oh, sorry about that. And then I will do the same over here. These rulers are long. Alright, so we have managed to get rid of all that, and then again we're just going to bring our short end up, get rid of all our bits of fabric there, and we are just going to clip down the side. Now we don't need to put a label on this at all this time. Okay, so you can see that I've got it clipped. Alright, so now what we're going to do is we're going to head to the sewing machine. You're going to put your presser foot on, and as I said, when you're using your presser foot, and hopefully you'll be able to see what I'm doing, you are going to use this edge of your presser foot as where you're going to line your fabric up against. Okay, so we're going to head over and we're going to do that, remembering to backstitch at the beginning and at the end. Alright, so, and just using a normal straight stitch. Okay. Okay, so now we're going to do the lining, and you just have to remember that we're just going to sew down to the line that we marked earlier. Okay, so again we're just going to do a couple of stitches, then we'll back tack using the edge of our presser foot as a seam guide. It works out to be about 3/8 of an inch, and remember to back stitch when we get to that mark. And I just jump it, place it down, do my back stitch, and then come off the end. And that back stitch is just reinforcing it, so when you turn it through it doesn't give it too much grief. Okay, alright, so we've got to that end, and I'll just clip that thread out of the way, and also on the back as well because our bobbin thread is there, and get rid of that. And then turn it over and go down the other side. Oh. Sometimes that happens with your wonder clips. They'll grab your little pop that back in there. Okay. All right, so that is that part of the sewing done. Pop all your wonder clips back, trim off all your excess threads. Now what I like to do now is grab my pinking shears, and I didn't mention these at the beginning because not everybody has them and I don't always use them. But for my lining, I'm going to just take off some of that bulk. Okay. And I'm going to do the same here, but I'm going to stop when I get to that opening, because I want a little bit of bulk for that opening so I can sew that together. Just like so. And I just cut it in. Okay, and I'm going to do the same thing over here. Now you're not cutting into your stitching, you're just cutting some of that seam allowance off. And I've just got a bin over there, that's why I keep chucking my stuff over there. Probably should have it a little bit closer than over the back of the sewing machine. Okay, and that's just going to get rid of some of the bulk, and it'll help lay our seams lay a little bit flatter. Alright, so now that we've done that, we've got our lining which has our opening still, so we will be able to turn our fabric basket through. Okay, so we're just going to set that aside for a second, move all these scissors out of the way, and then I'm just going to grab another ruler, just a little smaller one, and just a little bit easier to handle than that bigger one, and we're going to come down to the bottom, so where it's closed in, so not our opening, down to our bottom where our fold is, and we're just going to place our little ruler here at about the 1.5 inch mark. Is probably the best for this particular bag. So on this side where I've done all the cutting with the pinking shears, we've got peaks and valleys, so I've actually got the 1.5 mark sitting on the top of the peaks, and when I say peaks, that means this top part here, not where it's cut into it. Okay, and then I've got the 1.5 laying across the fold on the bottom. I'm just going to put a mark, draw a square with my friction pen or whatever, or chalk. You can use chalk if you want to. And then I'm going to do exactly the same thing again, and because I'm a little bit directionally challenged, I just move my piece around and make it easy for me. Alright. If you can hear that little squeaking sound, that is Arlo has come to pay me a visit, and hopefully she doesn't knock anything down. So again, I'm at the 1.5 on the fold and on the 1.5 mark on the peaks, and I'll just, oh, no I'm not, down a bit. Lucky that's a friction pen, hey. Alright. Cat distracted me. Alright, so we have those marks there. So this is where I either grab my rotary cutter or my scissors. This I actually prefer to use my scissors because the rotary cutter you can overshoot. So this makes it super easy. I just follow that line and I cut it out. Okay. And I haven't overshot that line. And then I do the same for the other side. And I get that out. Okay, so our piece is going to look like this. So our fold is down the bottom, our opening is at the top. We've done that to our exterior fabric, and what we do to our exterior fabric we need to do to our lining as well. So again, I'm going to grab my ruler and my marking pen, come down to the 1.5, making sure that the 1.5 mark is on the peaks, not the valleys, and we draw our square that we're going to cut out. And admittedly it is a little bit easier on the lining because you don't have the fluff to go through. Okay, get to our 1.5, and that's what's going to give our basket its flat bottom so it stands up. Alright, pop my ruler away and then grab my scissors and cut that out again. So remember, you can use your rotary cutter, but you do have to be very careful that you're not going to overshoot that mark. So it's better to work with a nice sharp pair of scissors where you can actually see what you're doing and not overshooting. I mean, it's pretty forgiving anyway, but still you don't want to do that. All right, so the next thing that we have to do is we have to sew these corners up. So again, we're going to head over to the sewing machine, and all we're going to do is we're going to put our hand in, and we're going to line our two edges up. Now I'm just going to fold that again and give that a really good press. And I'm just going to mark that crease. Just makes it a little bit easier to line it up and get it to sit flat. So you can see there, I've just marked where that crease is. Okay, so then what I'm going to do, it'll make it nice and easy for me to line up my seam with that mark there. And then I can either put a pin in or I can clip it. And I get my raw edges to line up. Okay, now don't stress too much. You can see there's a little bit that's just not quite lining up. It's okay, because it's still going to be lining up okay, and it won't make any difference to the finished product whatsoever. If it's going on an angle like this, well, then you're going to have to relook at it. You've probably cut it crooked, and you'll need to just check your measurements and all that sort of stuff. But if you've just got a tiny little bit like this, that's okay. Don't stress it too much. And then we're going to repeat that exactly the same thing on the other side. Again, lining up our seam and our raw edges. And I always line up the seam first, and then I can come back here and play around with that. And then again, we are going to use the edge of our presser foot as a seam guide. Okay, so we've done that to that one. Next, we're going to do that to our exterior fabric. And again, I'm going to give that a bit of a press, and I'm going to make a mark on that crease. And that's just going to be my guide. Okay, now with this one, it is a little bit bulkier, so you might want to just take it a bit slow. All right, and just get your seam to sit as flat as you can. That's why I take some of the bulk out. It means that I don't have to worry about trying to press it open or anything like that. So you can see there that that's lining up nicely. And again, we're just going to pop a couple of clips, and we're going to do exactly the same to the other side. All right, so once that is in and done, we're going to head over to the sewing machine, and we are going to sew these closed. We're almost done. It's a very quick little basket to go together, and they make great, I make these up when I'm giving a gift, when I'm doing birthdays, Mother's Day, and I'll put things in it. So I use these sorts of baskets mostly for bath products, because then the basket can be used to put hair elastics in, or you can store your bubble bath, your perfumes, whatever you want in it. So basically, anybody that gets a gift from me, generally, if I've got time, will get one of these to go with it. So I like to do gift baskets as opposed to gift bags. Just makes it gives it that little bit of homemade touch to it as well. So and then I find that a lot of people then ask me to make them for them, and then they're able to use them for theirs as well. All right, so I'm going to head over to the sewing machine. I've got the little cat in the studio with me right now. She's only a couple of weeks old, so she's missing her human. Her human's gone out for the day. So she's at my feet at the moment. So I'm going to head over to the sewing machine, and I'm just going to sew a straight stitch across each of these ones on the lining and also on the exterior. And I'm going to do a reverse at the beginning and at the end to secure that in place. Okay, so we've done that, and again I'm going to take some of that bulk out of the seam that we've just created. So what I'll do is I grab my pinking shears, and then all you're going to do is making sure that everything is out of the way and you're not cutting your actual bag. You're just going to snip without going into your stitches and take off some of that bulk. What this does is make everything sit a lot nicer. Makes it easier to handle. And just make sure that when you you do all this, that you have actually reversed at the beginning and at the end. And if you notice that you haven't, just quickly head over to your sewing machine and do a little bit of a back stitch on it, and then that way you know that none of your seams are going to come apart. All right, now we're up to the assembly part of it. Okay, so you can see there that that's quite thick and bulky, so it's really good to get rid of some of that bulk. All right, so I'll get all that out of the way. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to turn these in the right way. So this is my exterior fabric. Okay, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my lining fabric, which will remain inside out like so, and then I'm going to place this inside here. And what that means is my right sides are going to be touching, and when I turn it out, it'll be all the right way. So what you want to do is you want to get your fabric right in there, and you're right down into your corners, okay, and you're basically inserting them inside of each other. And then what you're going to do is you're going to find your seams, and we're going to have one going one way and one going the other way. And this is another reason why we take so much bulk out. Okay, and then we're going to line our raw edges up, but first of all we must start with our seams. So you can see there I'm aligning those up, and then I'm pushing one seam one way, so this is sitting this way and this is sitting that way, and they're lining up. If you feel more comfortable using a pin, by all means use a pin, but it is quite thick and it is much easier to use clips. Get all your threads out of the way as well, and do exactly the same over here. Get that clip into place, and that's going to hold it. And then you're just going to line all your raw edges up and clip all the way around. Okay. Alright, so we have gone all the way around with our clips, making sure that it's all smooth and lining up properly. Add an extra clip in, add as many as you need to get it to sit right. The nature of it is it's going to move and whatnot because it is a circle. So if you've got to have heaps in there, have heaps in there. Alright, so you can see there that we have our lining and our exterior right sides facing. Okay, so your right sides are in there. We've got our little gap on our lining to pull it through. So now what we're going to do is we're going to head over to the sewing machine, and again we're going to use the edge of our presser foot as a seam guide. Okay, and we're going to go all the way around. Now I like to start in a seam and finish in a seam. Okay, that way it sort of gets hidden and all the rest of it. So you may need to take this off to get it in, but what I do with my machine is I take my I've got a free arm on mine, so I can take this bit off. Okay, and you may be able to, gee, that needs a clean. You may be able to do that as well. Very dusty today. All right, and then all I'm going to do is I'm going to slip my little basket here, making sure my needle is in the up position. I'm going to remove that wonder clip and hold it with my hand, and then slide that underneath the presser foot, and I'm going to put the needle in the down position. So hopefully you can see that okay. I might just tilt the camera just a touch, and then you can see. So I've got it slid onto that. If it doesn't do that, that's fine. You can still sew it. You just sit it on top, and you'll start in the bottom and you'll work your way around. So I'll show you how to do that if you don't have a free arm. So I'll just take the needle out, pop my wonder clip on. So instead of doing it how I just done it with the free arm, you can sew it on top. So all I do is put this back on, and with my smaller baskets and bags I do this. I don't use the free arm because it's just near impossible to get it in there. Basically what I do is I just move everything out of the way. So you can see here I've just moved that top one out of the way, and then I'll just come at it like so, and then I'll sew it that way, and it'll just stitch all the way around. And you just take it little by little, and yeah, you're good to go. But if you've got a free arm, I suggest you take off your toolbox and use that. Okay, so again I'm going to slide that in, and I will just double check that they are still lining up because I have moved it quite a bit, and they've just moved a little bit. Alright, so I'll slide that under, and again we are using the edge of our presser foot. I've got the needle in the down position. Okay, and then all I'm going to do is I'm going to sew all the way around, and of course I'm going to back tack, and then I'm just going to sew that all the way around and remove my wonder clips as I go. Just hold my finger there, or your tailor's awl if you've got one, and just go slowly over that seam. So I'm coming back up to the seam now. Okay, so we've got all that done, you can see there. And now what I'm going to do, again, I'm going to get the pinking shears and I'm going to neaten that up a little bit. Okay, and all I do for that is I just come in on a little bit of an angle to start, and then I just trim around, not going too close to the stitching. Okay, and being careful of our seams because it is a little bit thicker there. And just get rid of some of that bulk. The reason I got into the habit of doing this is from handbag making, because it just makes everything sit a lot neater, looks a little bit more professional, and it does actually give you a nicer finish. I really do like the finish that it gives you. So alright, I've got around there. Alright, the next thing that we need to do is actually turn our little bag in the right way. Alright, so I can get rid of all my scissors now. That back on. Right, get all your bits and pieces off, get rid of all your threads, all your little scraggly bits that you pick up. I've got a thread there, so I'll get rid of that. Okay. Alright. Check inside your bag because you might have little bits and pieces that you've cut off and stuff like that that may have got in there. And now what we're going to do is we are going to turn our bag in the right way. So you're going to go to the side of your bag, and basically you're just going to put your fingers in there and you're going to start turning it out. Give it a good tug. Now if you've back stitched, you'll be fine. It won't pop your stitches or anything like that. Alright. Okay, we're just going to grab our ironing pad, and I can see that everything is stitched up really well. I haven't missed any. I haven't got any raw edges showing or anything like that. I've got my little label in the lining and all the rest of it. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to tuck that in. And I know I haven't sewn up that hole yet. We're going to do that next. So what I'm doing now is I'm just going to roll my seams. Okay. And get them all to sit nicely. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to clip it as I go. Then what I'll do is give it a really good press. And get everything to sit super nice. And then we will fold it over so we've got that little cuff at the top. Okay, just making sure that everything is sitting nicely. You can see that's all nice in there. Alright, so now what I'm going to do is bring the ironing pad back and the iron. And all I'm going to do is give that a really good press around the top. And you can remove your clips after that. That was just to hold it all into place as you're going. And give that a really good press. Now again, I just want to have the iron on warm, okay, because I don't want to have my inner facing shrink up or anything like that. Okay, and then all I do is just go all the way around. So you can see there I've got a nice edge. It's all meeting up. And then I will do the same here for my seams. And I'll just continue all the way around the bag, making sure that I'm pushing the lining in so it's laying nice and flat and I'm not getting any creases in there or anything like that. And as I said, you can take off the clips as you go. That was just to hold it in place to make it easy to get the iron. Okay, so, and then I go a little bit further into the bag, or this basket. Like I said, I was going to say bag a lot. Alright, so we now have our little flat bottom basket, and now what we're going to do is we're going to fold this over. And that will give us our little edge. So I fold it over about an inch, sometimes a little bit more, just depends. So you can see there, I'm just folding that over. And that's all sitting nicely inside. And as I said, I like to fold it over about an inch, sometimes a little bit more. You know, if it's a gift basket, I'll probably fold it down maybe 2 inches, but this one is probably going to get used for Mia for her hair elastics and whatnot. So I've got a little ruler here. This one's actually folding over nicely, and this seems to be very happy at 1.5, and I just measure that all the way around. So this side's got to come down a little bit. And I line up my seams as well, okay, and then I'm going to put a clip there, and I'm going to put a clip over here, and you'll see why in a second. Okay, so when you put your label in, if you put a label, you want to go down further than 2 inches, about 2.5 inches. It can be just near the top or a little bit further down. I generally, a rule of thumb, go down about 2.5 to 3 inches. Okay, then you want to just make sure that your little cuff is measuring at the 1.5, and you want to roll that over. Okay, once you're satisfied where your cuff and everything is sitting, what we're going to do is we're going to top stitch that into place. Okay, so that means that this cuff's not going to move in any way. All right, now before I do that, I make sure that everything is sitting correctly. I give it another press. Okay, I can see that that is sitting nice and even. Okay, and then I just grab my iron again, and I just do exactly what I did just before, and I just give it a press along the top. and the same over here. Okay. Alright, so I'm very happy with how that's sitting. I'm going to leave that clip in there because that's giving me my seam lining up, and the same on this side as well. Okay, and you can see there, that's quite a deep little bag, so that's the length of my hand. Okay, and you'll be able to fit a lot of different goodies in there. Alright, so what we're going to do is we're going to go over to the sewing machine, and we're going to start in a seam, and we're going to, this time you're going to put your 1/4 inch foot on. And we're going to do approximately a 1/4 inch seam allowance. You can be a little bit less if you want. If you want to do an 1/8, that's fine if you're a little bit more experienced, but for those beginners, we're going to do a 1/4 inch. And basically what we're going to do is effectively we're going to stitch this into place. Okay, now you can change your thread if you want to. I'm just going to stick with the white, and I'm going to make my stitch length a little bit longer than what it is. Okay, I'm going to take it up to probably about a 3mm to 3.5mm, so it's just going to give me a nicer finish. Alright, so again, we're going to head over to the sewing machine. You're going to elongate your stitches, and it will be easier for you to take the free arm off if you can do that. If not, just do it exactly the same way you did before and you'll be right. Okay, so I am going to bring this under, and I'm going to just change my presser foot to my 1/4 inch, which I've got hiding around the back here in my little toolbox. Pop that out of the way. So for those that don't know what a 1/4 inch foot, this is what they can look like. They vary from machine to machine. Alright, so again, we're going to go up under here. And I'm actually going to, you can do a 1/4 inch seam allowance, or you can do an 1/8 of a seam allowance. If you're a beginner, I would do a 1/4 inch. But if you're experienced, and I'm not sure that you can see this, so I'm going to tilt the camera. Okay, I can do an 1/8 of an inch with this particular foot. So this, where my needle is sitting right now, is in the center. I'll just double check that. Yep. Okay, it's sitting in the center. And basically this little foot, part of the foot here, and I've zoomed in a little bit for you to see that, is an 1/8, that measures an 1/8 of an inch if my needle's sitting in the middle. If I was stitching on the other side, this thicker one is actually a 1/4 of an inch. So if you've got a foot like this and you are a beginner, you can definitely do an 1/8 of an inch. You just have this edge here, so I'll just grab my pen so you can see this little point here running along the edge of your fabric, and that's going to give you approximately an 1/8 of an inch. Okay, if you're not as comfortable as that, just put your regular foot on. Alright, so I'm going to hopefully get that to stay there, and you'll see how I'm doing that. Alright, I don't know how successful I'm going to be, but anyway, we'll see. Alright, and I didn't want to start there. Oops, so that's fine. I want to come around to the seam. Okay, and that's where I want to start because I want to lock that into place. Okay, so I'm going to adjust it and bring it around, and as I said, that's where I want to start. Okay, I'm lining up my fabric. I'm going to put my needle in the down position, and I'm going to hand crank it because we have a few seams here and you don't want to just start it straight away. So I'm going to do 2 stitches, and then I'm going to reverse. Okay, and that's going to lock that in place. And now I'm just going to stitch that in place, taking it nice and slow, needle in the down position so I can adjust, and it's not going to change my position of the needle or the position of where I'm stitching. And you can see there I'm just going along the edge. Okay, and then when I get up to this end, I'll make sure that my seams are lining up, and I'll continue on. Now, when you come up to your seam, just make sure that you're not having any issues with the thickness or anything like that. So just take it nice and slow. You know, thickness will snap a needle if you're not careful. I don't need to backstitch or anything there. and you can see that I'm just adjusting as I go. Just have to take that thread out where I went before. Okay. And we're coming around to our next seam where we started. And again, we're coming up to a thick seam, so we want to take it nice and slow. And we just, and then do a back stitch. All right, and that's it. Take off our clips. Get rid of our long threads. All right. Again, we're going to grab our, pop that out of the way now. All right, so I'm going to grab my ironing board and my iron, and I'm going to give that one final press. All right, and there we go. That is our cute little flat bottom basket. So now you can fill that with all the goodies that you need, but before we do that, we do need to sew this edge down. So what I do is I just hand sew that with a whip stitch, and I will link up a video on how to close things up at the top. But all I do is just get a regular sewing needle. I'll clip that closed for now. Grab my thread from my sewing machine. I just basically pull it from the top, cut a piece, and then I'll just grab my sewing needle. Okay, so I bring my two ends together and I just do a quick quilting knot and snip off the excess. And then when I start, I actually start up in the seam a little bit, so I can bury my knot. So I go into the seam, and then that hides it. And then all I'm going to do is just do a come back down. Then I'm just going to come out on the edge of the fabric there, and then I'm just going to go backwards and forwards. So I'll come out there, and then I'll go across, come out there, and I'm just taking little tiny bites of the fabric so you can't actually see the stitches, and they sort of disappear into the fabric. Of course, you can use the same color thread. I'm just using white today just to show you. Okay, and you see in there, when I pull it, it disappears. Okay, and that is essentially closing up that gap. And we just sew up to the other end. So just little bites. You don't want to take big chunks of the fabric. You just want little bites of the fabric right on that edge, and then you can barely see it. So you can see there I'm using white and you can barely see that. Of course, if I was doing this for sale or for a gift for someone, then obviously I would have used orange thread, but for today, for the purpose of the video, I'm using and hopefully you can see me what I'm doing there. It's a little bit tricky to get that on camera. Now these are great not just for using for, like I use them for gifts, but you can use them around your studio. You could use this as a little bin beside your sewing machine. You could use it for storing your threads in. These are big enough to hold a few cones of thread, like I use large cones of thread. You could fit a ton of odds and ends in there. You could make them a little bit smaller. You just adjust the size. I always like to have them between 8 and 10 inches. Occasionally, if it's a big present that I'm doing, I might go up to 12 inches by 18. And if I'm using it for, say, wonder clips or small spools of thread, then I wouldn't do it at 18. I would probably do it at around 15 inches by 8 or something along that line. That's a still pretty good basket, but yeah, just makes it a little bit less high, a little bit shorter too. So have a play around and with the different sizes. Do exactly the same as what I've done here, just try different sizes. Remember that your short edge is actually the edge that is the opening, and that's all you have to remember. The top of your basket. So when I get up to the end, I just basically go in, put my last stitch in, and then I will come up in that seam again, and I'll just do a quick slip knot, slip that down, and then I will go down separating the two fabrics, and then I will basically go between the basket outside and the lining, and I will just pull that like so. Usually I go through the seam, but you'll get the general picture, and then that'll just bury that, and that's done. So that is now all stitched up. As I said, if this was for a present for someone or anything like that, I would have used orange thread, but in purposes for today I've used white. Okay, so that is now all stitched up and it's ready to be used. So now you can put whatever you want in there. So as I said, make sure that you line all your seams up, take out some of that bulk, and there you go. That is our cute little flat bottom basket. Well, thank you so much for joining me today. I really do hope that you enjoyed this little tutorial. Quick and easy little basket to make. I can see many of these getting made to put gifts in and all that sort of stuff. As I said, you could use it for hair elastics, you could use it for sewing notions, you can use it as a little trash can, as it sits nice and flat, and it's easy to make. So if you like this video today, don't forget to give us a thumbs up down below, hit that subscribe button and the little bell icon beside it, and then that way you won't miss out on any future posts. And until next time, happy sewing everybody, and have a great day. Bye for now.